Welcome back. Tzvi Broker here with Rabbi Yehoshua Gerzi, and today's topic is a hot one being spoken about in the workplace, companies, really countries, which is how can we work to reduce the stress which is taking place today at people's jobs. The reports are astonishing. So speaking about millions and millions of dollars which are being lost, and it's not just the therapists and the psychologists which are trying to figure it out. It's even the business owners, and governments are trying to figure out how we can diffuse this issue. So to start off, we'll just, mention, in the Base Medrash program, we spent a lot of time speaking about this topic. And it's fascinating, of course, we've shared this, how there's a reality, that as frum Jews, people that are following the Torah and want to be able to learn Torah and want to be able to serve Hashem as much as possible, that somehow there's been this creation where we have people that may feel not so positive about their jobs. They may feel like, I don't really want to be working. Work is something that I don't really love doing. And really what's underneath that is the fact that for a lot of people, they just have this type of association that work is something which is stressful. Right? So you can have people that when they're thinking about, how much do I want to be working, or people that are considering, who are in learning, considering going out to working, and they're trying to make considerations. Sometimes what could be taking place is that the whole experience of work, the whole experience of finance, which is something which is stressful for a person. And that could be subconsciously sometimes driving a person's decisions, which is really mind-boggling. So what we want to do here today, because here at Pilzno Work Inspired, we're all about trying to create a positive work environment. We're all about trying to create even an inspiring work environment where we feel positive and we about our work. What can we do about this stress? What can we do about this reality of the fact that for so many people, they go to work and the experience that they have at work is something which is stressful?
Okay. I think it's a big topic, a very, very big topic. Maybe we could start off just by sharing that when we speak about stress, on a certain respect, we can speak about all midas. We could speak about any midah. And the question is, where is that midah coming from? What is that midah? So didn't we speak about that?
Well, we've spoken about a lot in the podcast, that whenever we're talking about any topic, a very big yesod is that we have to understand the definition of it.
That's right.
We have to understand the definition. But I think in terms of understanding so where does this...
So it's the same, really it's the same when we speak about any midah, but it's the same with stress as well. Basic questions like, where is stress coming from? Are we dealing with essence or a symptom? Is stress a symptom of something? When we discuss what stress is, what is the definition of stress? I think usually people would say that stress is when you meet something which you would label as pressure, and you don't necessarily match up to holding that pressure, and it pushes against you. There's this tension that's created, and it's a feeling of what are some of the words, if we're playing a game, what are some of the words
and so in the
you use?
It's interesting, in the studies, that we spoke about, we went through them. It's quite funny on some level, but when it speaks about funny or sad, but it was showing about what's taking place as a result of this work-related stress.
I don't know, maybe I'm interrupting you too early. I'm asking what words, what definitions, what experiences come up when I say the word stress? Pressure, tension, anxiety. So there's this feeling where it's overwhelmed, you feel overwhelmed. Like, just to the viewers, what words come up when we say stress? And is there a very defined definition? You'll find, Tachlis, that there are a few different definitions. And it's important at least just to hear those definitions that you could label within yourself. Is this a stressful situation or not? So for example, say stress in the workplace. Now, again, listen to these words. It's very funny because I don't mean funny as in, God forbid, putting it down, because it's a sensitive topic. People get triggered. It really is. It's a sensitive topic. It's interesting. Let's change the lotion. It's interesting. When people speak about stress, they, so to speak, externalize it. So there's a stressful person, or a stressful place, a stressful situation. So, lemashal, there's this something called stress, and it's caused by the place, stress in the workplace, or it's caused by a situation, or it's caused by a person.
Yeah.
So to speak, that outside of me, there is this environment which is stress, and I could walk into it and then experience stress.
Right.
Or I can stay away from it and feel non-stressed, feel relaxed.
Right. That's what coming up, in the studies, in the studies that we discussed, we saw, the top 10 reasons why people are experiencing stress. So things came up like, a boss.
The boss.
Things
yes.
came up like their coworkers.
Yeah.
Things came up. It was a very big one. Came up, deadlines, not being given, the amount of time or the resources that are needed to be able to achieve a specific task. So these were the things that were coming as being like, the top 10 stressors. What are these causes of stress? What I'm hearing is
externalizing.
They're both, they're all external.
So
like
is that MS? Like that's like when we went through these studies, when we speak about stress, when we speak about many midos, is it truthful? Like if we're on a search for truth, I don't know what that means, but I think we're trying to, what is truth? I don't know. I'm trying to figure it out in a search for truth. But when we speak about stress, can we say, stressful place, person, situation, etc., or is that actually incorrect? I would go as far to say it is
incorrect.
Correct.
Wait, so you're saying that our whole title of our podcast, work-related stress, is incorrect?
I think yes.
Oh.
But
All right.
I think we have a major problem, and that is we're dealing with a symptom. We're not dealing with the cause. And if we constantly run around dealing with symptom and not cause, then there's a major issue that lays in front of us. I'll give an example. So, okay, let's reframe this slightly. Let's say like this, that when we speak about stress, stress is something that exists, okay? And typically what we say, that there's stressful situations, stressful people, stressful places. So, okay, so now I don't interact with areas of my life because I don't want to be challenged. So I will not potentially meet with a person maybe I would want to meet with. I don't turn up to a situation where maybe I do want to turn up to a situation. I don't go to a certain place, maybe I want to go to that certain place because it will trigger me and it'll be stressful. So we lose out with this sort of definition of what stress is. We lose out on moments in life that could be completely and utterly enriching. I'll give you a prime example. One of my teachers, Dayan Lopian, he was very blunt. Very, very blunt. And did he have good midos? He had sterling midos, but he was blunt. That was his personality. Another of my teachers, Rabbi Moshe Shapiro, was very blunt. And I remember one particular incident with Dayan Lopian is that I used to go to him. Now, Dayan Lopian, for those who know the stories, if I said something stupid, oh my gosh, he would let me know. He'd let me know, he'd give me a smack. And like, really, it was, some people would call it savage. I call it a luxury. It was the most, for me, my codification of the experiences, that there's this unbelievable Yid. It's Tyra Yid. He's a tzaddik. In my eyes, he's a tzaddik. Comes from unbelievable yichus. He himself was part of that chain. It wasn't that his Zayda of Eli Lopian and his brother-in-law and the whole richness of the Masorah of where he came from was just a Masorah. He lived it. He was it. He was part of that chain, and he had a derech of avodah which was not fluffy. So I remember a friend of mine. I had the opportunity. I would go there a few times a week. Nachon, a few times a week I'd go there. Almost every day at certain times in my life, and I would sit with him, and it was wonderful. So I had a friend of mine, he was learning in Koilo, and he had the opportunity to come with me. But he didn't come with me. Why? He says, because Dayan Lopian stresses me out.
Wow.
Anyway, I sat with him for a number of years. I was Zoicha to go a number of years. And Chazde Hashem, it's priceless what I learned with him. Conversations. Mamash, until he was niffed out, sometimes call him 3 times a day. And Dayan Lopian, he understood me. Again, like, he understood the reading issue. He understood the dyslexia. And he was very real with that. He understood my idiosyncrasies. He understood where, like, my reading got in the way. So sometimes I can ask him a question, like, you have to chap something. Sometimes I'd ask him a question and I'd get mixed up with terms. And he wouldn't blast me for that. He wouldn't, like, tell me off for that. He chapped. Okay, this is where Rabbi Yeshua's up to. Labriut. But then if I did ask a silly question when I shouldn't have asked it, he would destroy me. But that's how you grow. Thinking, rethinking. Is this a question? Another person who was very much like that, I mentioned him before, and that's Reb Moshe Shapira. Reb Moshe Shapira, Zichron Livracha, was unbelievable. Now, if I asked a dumb question, my gosh, he let me know it was a dumb question. So for other people, they missed out on that unbelievable opportunity of growth. Maybe I'm just a glutton for punishment, I don't know. But I feel they refined me constantly. Think. But what my friend said, no, it's very stressful, I can't, it's very stressful. So the question is, though, the fundamental question is that a symptom of something? Is stress a symptom? And what I would come to say is stress is a symptom. Stress is a symptom. Maybe we can share like this. I would say that most people like to feel safe, secure, and most people like to feel satisfied. And when their internal safety or security, or when they're not feeling satisfied, then this something bubbles up called stress.
Stress.
So if somebody, you go to work and your boss says something to you, and it's like, come on, this isn't on time, you feel overwhelmed. Maybe the work was overwhelmed. Now, that feeling of stress, that tension that you feel inside, really, really, really is not coming from the boss. Where, in essence, is it coming from? It's coming from your thinking. Stress, I would say, is a manifestation of how you are interpreting something that's going on. Take, for example, a thin piece of wood. And the thin piece of wood is on the floor. And you ask somebody to walk that thin piece of wood. So they're la, it's on the floor, they walk that thin piece of wood. Fantastic. Now you take the same thin piece of wood and elevate it 100 meters in the air and ask somebody to walk the thin piece of wood. Oh, they're like nervous. Oh my gosh, what's going on? Now, you may ask, what are you feeling when you're walking on that thin piece of wood 100 meters up? What would you say? Stressed, very stressed. Why? Why are they stressed? Because they're being challenged. And what really is the cause of their stress? It's their thinking of consequences. One wrong step and then they can fall. Thinking about what the consequences are. So what's the difference between walking that thin piece of wood when it's on the ground to walking that piece of wood when it's 100 meters up? The consequence of what could happen. So maybe what we can say, again, I'm throwing something out here. We're talking about it. We're trying to open this up a little bit. But what we can say is that maybe stress is coming from our thinking. So you could take somebody who can walk that thin piece of wood 100 meters up, who's done it many times before, and they're comfortable and they're not thinking of it, just walk it. They're not thinking about it. And it's an amazing thing, because when somebody experiences stress, what happens to their body? Do they tighten up or they remain loose?
They tighten up.
And what happens when they tighten up? Do people function better when they're tight, or do people function better when they're looser?
Generally when they're looser.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So our thinking can lead us in a direction where we're challenged. And if we feel we can't hold that challenge because of whatever thoughts are coming up, we feel overwhelmed, we don't communicate, we close up, we go inside, then what happens is a lot of not good things. And it's interesting because there's billions of dollars, like you mentioned. There's several papers dealing with stress in the workplace and the amount of money, sick days, like it causes ill health, physical, emotional. And I think, with love, humbly, respectfully, I think they're dealing with the symptom, not the cause.
I see. Meaning everyone's speaking about, if we want to try to be able to solve stress at the workplace, and then we have to look at how to be able to improve the relationships, how to be able to change the amount of hours, how to be able to, change anything which is showing up on the studies as being the external cause. While what we're saying over here is that really where stress is coming from is within our own minds and within our own thinking. And therefore, the ability for us to be able to make that shift and the ability for each one of us in our own way to be able to de-stress our workday, right, is to be able to understand where the root of stress is coming from within, and then to be able to diffuse it.
Yeah.
So what would you recommend, for anybody here? I mean, I know some.
I want to add one more nakuda. I'm sorry, one more nakuda came up now. It's interesting. Any single time we're dealing with something external, and a person's not guided to recognize the internal representation of it, it's never going to last. You look at socialism, you look at communism, you look at any external structure, any government external structure that's working on making things easier. If the understanding of source is missed, it doesn't matter what the externalities will be. That's based on the Baal Shem Tov. That was one of the chidushim of the Baal Shem Tov, by the way. One of the core chidushim of the Baal Shem Tov is that everything is coming from within. It's an inside-out paradigm, not an outside-in paradigm. Most people look at midos, most people look at the way the world works as outside-in. We're saying, and this was again one of the chidushim of the Baal Shem Tov, inside-out. And another chidush of the Baal Shem Tov is to turn every nisayon into a nasiyah. Every frustration into a fascination, every bedieved into a lechatchila. But where does that source from? Source is from our thinking. So if a person is stressed, turn it into a challenge, an opportunity of growth. That's two chidushim of the Baal Shem Tov, Derech Baal Shem Tov. And again, I think sometimes when we look at stress in the workplace and stress generally, the hashkafa, I believe, is, again, you can challenge what I'm saying. I'm just sharing what I've learned from my teachers and what I've seen, and I think as well from you. What we've seen from people, it's an inside-out paradigm, not an outside-in. We never relate to the world outside of us. We're always relating to our interpretation of the world. So, for example, you may say something nasty to me. Yeah, you're my boss, and like, oh, you didn't get the paperwork in on time, you didn't do this on time, didn't do that on time. So the way I feel about it, if one really reflects upon it and goes inside and goes to source, not to look at symptoms, but to source, is that it's not you that's bothering me. It's my interpretation of what's going on that's bothering me. It's my thinking that's bothering my feelings. And that's a guiding system. The more I can be in sync with my inner experience, the more I can be aware of my inner experience. The more I can be aware, look at these thoughts that are coming up. It guides me and lets me know where I'm up to in my experience. So I'm feeling this. Okay, maybe I have to now have a conversation with you. Don't speak to me like this. Maybe I have to put up a boundary, or maybe I have to say, listen, this is the amount of time you've given me. I don't have the skills to do this. Sometimes you may have to say, I have to leave this job. Sometimes you may have to say, I have to reorientate the way I'm dealing with the situation. Or sometimes you just deal with what's going on and do the best you can. Right.
But what I'm hearing you saying is that we have this paradigm of outside in, right, which just seems that that's what's being spoken about and that's what's being dealt with. And then what we're sharing here in the space is that we have the inside out, right, which is that we recognize that whatever that external trigger is, whether it's the boss or whether it's the environment you're in, whether it's that client you're dealing with, right, that just drives you crazy. That is the external. We understand that the stress that we experience is coming from internally. So the question is that now that we have that understanding, if you're a person who's viewing in and somebody that got stressed because of something that's taking place. So now I understand that, okay, this is coming from something internal. And what I just heard right now, which was very profound, is that we have the ability to be able to become aware of the fact that right now I'm experiencing symptoms of stress. My breathing's getting faster. Suddenly there's sweat on my forehead. Suddenly, I'm starting to feel like my heart is racing. I'm experiencing stress, so I can notice that and then use that for us to be able to then say, well, what's going on over here? And maybe there's something I need to change. That's what I just heard right now. But what could a person do to change that reaction that one may have been having to a specific situation? I'm not saying it's going to be an easy flip, but the reality is whether it's external or internal, there's so many people, they're experiencing whenever that coworker, walks into the office, whenever they see that email show up from their boss, or whatever they get assigned a project, in that location or in that, with that software, they start experiencing stress. So what can we do to be able to de-stress our workday? For sure, the first step is understanding where it's coming from, because, as one of a teacher I once studied from in a parenting class, Rabbi Brizak, he had a great line, and I've thought about it. He says, if you want to get to Yerushalayim, the first thing you need to do is you have to get off the bus that's going to Bnei Brak, right? Which is that when you're trying to go somewhere, the first thing you need to do is stop going on the bus, which is the other way. And therefore, what we're saying over here is that, we can only start a conversation about how we can distress our workday when we understand that if we're trying to solve the issue with something which is external, we're not going to come to the actual solution. But now that we've gone off the bus from Bnei Brak, okay, now I understand. It's an internal process that needs to be worked on. But this is something which I've been stressed about for years. This is something which, like, every single time I get put into that situation, like clockwork, I start experiencing stress. What can we do?
Okay. First of all,
in a few minutes or less. I understand. These are topics Rabbi's given workshops on and retreats on, but just, for this audience here, today, what can we start to think about, at least as an opening pathway for us to be able to try to work with ourselves authentically and try to be able to experience at least a little bit less stress than we experienced before we tuned in.
Okay. There's a couple of movements here. There's a rhythm here. I'll try and somehow let's see where we can go with this. And I want to hear what you think about this. First, I'd say like this: that, as we mentioned before, when we're speaking about stress is a symptom of something. What's it a symptom of? It's a symptom of, as we said, our thinking. Okay. Let me add in something else here. When we're speaking about many of the unhealthy midas, we, as we said, want to feel safe and secure, and we want to feel satisfied. And then when that safety and security and satisfaction is challenged, then these bad midas come up. So let's say in between stress and our thinking is a wanting to control. That's stage one. We want to control. I think this is important to understand. And again, this needs to be fleshed out, but just throwing things out there for us to reflect upon, to think about. So we want to control. That's number one. So when I feel stressed, I'm overwhelmed. My natural wanting, I should recognize, okay, I want to feel control here. But I can't always be in control. There's certain things I could be in control of and certain things I can't be in control of. So it's to know, number one, like superficially speaking, what can I be in control of and what can't I be in control of?
I mean, we may have an expectation, we may have some type of a subconscious expectation for things to work out a specific way, and therefore, when something happens that seems to be threatening that expectation, that's what ends up creating this whole entire, process of stress.
On one level, yes, on one level. And it's to think about that. Now you can write it down. And you can choose. Again, one simple way to at least get used to the fact of going deeper into cause and move away from the superficialness of symptom is, this nakuda of, which I really don't like stress management. Like, why would you want to manage your stress? Just don't have it
Don't
in the
have
first
it.
place.
Right.
If you can. If you can. And again, like this funny idea of stress management. Like, you're dealing with symptom. Why are you constantly dealing with symptom? So we're respecting the fact that there is a symptom of stress. Take a piece of paper, write down what you're feeling. Take a piece of paper, record, speak to somebody. This is what's going on internally right now. These are my thoughts that are coming up right now. Relate to the symptom of stress. But then as we go deeper, we want to understand that Torah Hashkafa, Torah wants us to live from a place of what we call clarity, awareness, das. That we want to manifest from a place of clarity, a place of awareness. And what we ultimately want is to realize, why is it that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us the Torah in the second 2,000 years of creation? We know there 2,000 years of Tov Vavot, 2,000 years of Torah, 2,000 years of Yemais Moshiach. Why in the second 2,000 years? Because we've had the first 2,000 years to realize that we need to get out of the first 2,000 years.
A lot of chaos.
So chaos, exactly. So good chaos, like there's potential, raw potential from that chaos. So we want to be able to observe. That second 2,000 years is that I could observe the chaos and then hopefully take clarity, which is going weiter the neshama, and there is a higher wisdom, and I can take that higher wisdom and live from that higher wisdom, live from that clarity. So how that's experienced in real life is that I have a nefesh. I have a nefesh. My nefesh is what we call the animal self, the lower self, the nefesh abahami. It's not derogatory. It's characteristic of impulses, like an animal. Nothing wrong with that. It's not like a derogatory term, the animal self. All of us have that animal within. And what we want to know is that we have the Adam, the human being within as well. The human being. And the human being could dwell and live in the animal self, or the human being could become a conscious being and learn to work with the animal self, drawing from the neshama, which is a higher wisdom. So what that would experience is as following, that in our language, now introducing the wider audience to a language if they haven't heard it before, but in our language, the world of the behemoth is what we call hisorurus and dachav, stimulus and response. There's a trigger, you're triggered, and there's a reaction, and there's no gap in between. So the trigger and reaction, there's a hisorus and dachav, that I'm triggered by something, bang, I jump onto it. That's the world of the behemoth. That's the world in relationship to the animal self. So I see a piece of cake, I jump on that piece of cake, I want to eat that piece of cake. The boss says something to me that I don't like, or a work colleague says something to me that I don't like, bang, I attack. I don't think about it, I go for it. You challenged me, I'm going to challenge you back. You made me feel unsafe, insecure, you challenged me, bang, I'm going to give you justice back. There's no thinking about it. That's the animal self. Now, I know that sometimes in life I have reacted like this. I don't know, you're a malach, Chudush Yarim, Sfasemes, the Pilzno, you're like a malach, you don't act like that.
Of course not.
The person behind the camera is a gingy, so, they that's all they know. So the point is that when we're living life, I can act upon impulse. That's nefesh.
Okay.
That's nefesh. Then Adam, what's Adam? Adam is when I bring in the human being consciousness, the reflective part of me, and I can create a gap between the trigger and reaction. I can create a gap between the hisorus and dachav. So I can see that piece of cake, and instead of like behemoth just jumping on it, jumping on it, I can. Well, no, but that's the MS. That's the MS. I can now be in a state of consciousness. I can be in this state of awareness, and I can create a gap between me and
make that decision how to respond. I see.
I can now think about how I want to respond. That's the world of Adam. The world of Torah, the world B'nai Torah, the children of Israel with our beautiful, glorious Torah that Hashem gave us. What is that state of consciousness? So I have a gap now. Ultimately, what I want is to drop into that gap. Torah and halacha. So, for example, if it is relating to my boss says something. So in the world of, or work colleague, so the work colleague says something not nice to me. So now I think, because I'm in lower state of consciousness, that what they said to me made me upset, which, as we said, is not true. Really, it's my interpretation of what they said to me made me upset. Because either I could be in Behema and you said what to me? How dare you say such a thing? And you know, why is it that sometimes when I act out, people are annoyed I have a very strong English accent? Very, it's like, what did you said that to me? So the world of Adam would say, in the world of Adam, shh, I know that you want to attack, but and it could even be Nebuch. They may come to you 5 minutes later and they may say, listen, I'm so sorry for shouting at you. My grandmother's not well and this has happened and the car brake. And mamash, it's got nothing to do with you, Nebuch. And what do they need from you? They need rachamim, sympathy, compassion. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. Are you okay? Like, it's a crazy matzav. How many times when we've spoken this through in situations that then somebody has an incident with somebody, and instead of being in a state of behema, they go into a state of Adam and they say to the person, are you okay? Sometimes people are just constantly, since you know them, bang, 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 bang. Maybe they've got major issues they're dealing with, who knows? But until you come into a state of Adam,
you're not able to even
comprehend it.
That. Wow.
And then when you're in a state of B'nai Torah, and you'd gimel midos rachamim, you could bring in halacha. What does the halacha ask of me? What's my obligation right now in how to relate and react to this that's going on?
Right, but you're saying that's something which would fall in once we've created this space, that gap of awareness of das, where it's able to fall in, to be able to settle in.
Yes.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I was thinking about when you were just sharing right now, because I know for myself, and I know from conversations had with a lot of people, when we hit stressful situations, whether it's in our jobs or it could be in finances, something comes up which is unexpected, right? Or we're dealing with uncomfortable conversation that we need to have, and we start to experience stress. As from Jews, we're good. The world experiences stress, but we know how to create more ways to be able to do it. So one of the ways that we do that, and we try to make ourselves even more miserable, is we say, if I'd really be a Baal Emunah, if I really believed in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, then I wouldn't be stressed. So not only am I wrong because I'm feeling stressed, I also don't have Emunah. And I also don't have bitachon. So I'm a real Rasha, chas v'shalom, right? It's like, if I had real emunah, then I wouldn't, look, so I don't have emunah, I don't have bitachon, because look at the way that I'm reacting. And what I was just resonating while you were speaking is that the only place that emunah and bitachon, which are topics within themselves of the differences between them, it's not our topic right now, but the only place for that emunah bitachon to settle in is when we're in that place of awareness that we created that space. But kol zaman, the whole time that we're just reacting
from the nefesh habahami instead of the nefesh hasichli.
There is no place. So it could be that we do have emunah. We do. It's just that it's not able to settle in because we haven't been able to open up that space for it to be able to fall into it. So sometimes we can mistakenly diagnose what's going on, but really what's the root over here is that the only way for us to be able to start to be able to make that positive shift, or in our language here today, to be able to stress, to de-stress our situations, is by first creating that kli, that vessel, and accessing the part of ourself, right, with the das and the awareness, so that therefore we're able to look at these situations and be like, hey, that just doesn't have the same response for me anymore. Do you have a good story about that? Somebody who was so stressed about something, and then going through this practice of becoming more of a bardas.
Oh, lots of stories.
Okay,
one story from a few days ago. A few days ago, I was talking to somebody, and they've got their monthly avodah. They've got, in one of the chavuras, they've got a person who they constantly see, and this person, they trigger them no end. And I think always I like practice, tachlis, practice. We spoke about a big, high idea, tachlis. So what happens is that he goes to work and he grounds himself. He'll feel the ground under his feet, place his attention on his breath, just listen, just look around and just ground himself and realize, okay, I want to be a Ben Torah. I want to be a Ben Torah. I have to start off by being an Adam. And when that person comes in, he breathes and he recognizes, okay, there's something in me that's being stimulated and I can choose to give into it, or I can choose to say, I know you're there. I know the thought that comes up, I know you're there. And a couple of weeks ago, he knew this Avodah, he knew this technique. And I said to him, well, do it then. Do it. And it's an amazing thing. He still gets triggered, but definitely not as much. And straight away, he's noticing a difference. He could be more loving. He could be more compassionate with them. He actually asked a couple of days ago, how are you doing? And it was an amazing...
Never would have done that before.
Never. So yes, this is something real, and it does take time. And sometimes we'll mess up, and that's okay. We get back up on our feet, and we keep on going.
Wow, it's a powerful story, and it's definitely something which I know that could be relevant for so many people. Just to wrap up, I know that Rabbi, you mentioned before that there's the external and the internal, and from a Torah perspective, right? We understand that we can make that choice, and ultimately it's up to us. But I know that at the same time, and we discussed this, that there is a recognition from the Torah's perspective about the fact that the more that we get to know ourselves, and the Torah is definitely pro-knowing yourself. It's like the Aleph base, right? Is the more that we know, that we can become aware of the fact that there are certain triggers, there are certain environments, right, that could end up creating challenges for us. Work style, something I have a lot of conversations with people about, and there's I can't tell you, it's fascinating how so many people, they could be working for 20, 30 years and they're not even aware of themselves, how they function most optimally. They're not aware of themselves, that actually, when I'm in a situation where, I'm more with a lot of people, that hinders my productivity, yes. Right? And, when I'm sitting in front of a computer screen, that hinders my productivity. There's so many people that are not aware of those things. And what we find is that the Torah does tell us, and this is a topic within itself, the idea of kviyas makom, right? Yes. That we have this idea when it comes to Torah, when it comes to tefillah, that an environment counts. And we recognize the fact that there are certain environments that will help us to be more productive, and certain environments which can create challenges for us. And therefore, there is a level of recognition, right, for each person, right, who's experiencing work in your own way, to know yourself and to know that if there are certain situations externally which trigger you, sometimes try to avoid the situations
until you've worked on yourself,
right?
That you can come to that point.
Exactly. At the same time, to know, and this is where you started off with, is that sometimes by avoiding those situations, we're actually holding ourselves back from tremendous growth. We're holding ourselves back from earning more money. We could be holding ourselves back from being able to ask for that raise, to be able to really advance ourselves, to be able to feel more satisfied. The key, to knowing, to be able to make that shift, right, is becoming more of this conscious person, becoming more aware of our ability to be able to open up our dots. Beautiful. And when we do that, so then we have the ability to be able to expand ourselves, and somehow those things and those situations and those people, like you said in that story, that used to bother us so much, that used to cause us the most anxiety and stress, that's how the tikkun is done. That's how the tikkun is done, is because I could face that same situation and somehow it's not causing me that stress, yes, because I myself have grown internally. So thank you for sharing that paradigm. And we should all have the siyata d'shmaya, the help from Hashem, to be able to become more aware of ourselves, more aware of what's going on internally, and to have the courage and the strength to be able to grow and to be able to overcome those challenges and experience an enjoyable day at work with less stress.
Amen.